So about a month ago, there were protesters in the United States in reference to this war with Israel and Gaza that decided to take their protesting to another level. They decided to block the ships that were actually going to carry the weapons to Israel. We'll take a look at that. Al Jazeera had covered that. And then I'm going to show you what happened in the UK just the other day. So the protests are making some noise, guys. I want to go ahead and fast forward a little bit because, or actually I can play it without sound for the first part because, so it said these protesters are trying to block a ship from leaving the port. So this is Cape Orlando. It was bound for Israel and it was carrying weapons and other military hardware. So the protesters showed up.
Any sort of arms shipments from the United States to Israel.
Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
So you can see they also had these same actions in Oakland, Tacoma, Washington. About 300 protesters delayed its departure, and the U.S. Coast Guard detained 3 people who climbed onto the ship. So it's talking about the U.S. has been the largest provider of military assistance to Israel since the country's founding in 1948. So again, when I make the statement that Joe Biden has blood on his hands, this is exactly why. When I say the U.S. government has blood on their hands, this is exactly why I make that statement. Now, just the other day, there was another effort to this, which actually did succeed. This happened, however, in the UK. Israel-Palestine war. Protesters blockade UK factories building F-35 warplane parts used by Israel. Workers and trade unions have targeted 4 British armed factories supplying components used to build the F-35 stealth fighter. So you can see here, Israel targets health infrastructure. So now you see protesters, they're going after the weapon manufacturers. They're going after these shipping locations. It says hundreds of workers and protesters have shut down 4 armed factories across the UK, which supply components for the F-35 stealth fighter jet used by Israel to bomb Gaza. The 4 armed factories include Eaton Mission Systems in Bournemouth, BA Systems at Salisbury Aerodrome in Lancashire, L3 Harris Factory in Brighton, and the BA Systems Govan site in Glasgow. Each of the 4 arms factories supply components that are necessary for building the F-35 stealth fighter jet. According to its company website, L3 Harris Systems are integral to several U.S. combat aircraft, including the F-22, the F/A-18, and the F-35. It also manufactures bomb release mechanisms for the F-35 combat aircraft and Reaper drone, both of which are deployed by Israel in Gaza. Footage posted online showed activists blockading the entrances to the 4 factories since early morning and preventing workers from the arms factory from entering the sites. Jenny, a trade unionist from the group Workers for a Free Palestine, which helped organize Thursday's actions, said the blockade was a necessary step to support Palestinians trapped in Gaza. So she says here, the fighter jets these factories help to produce are being used to imprison the people of Gaza in a death trap. So that's from Jenny, and she's a part of Workers for a Free Palestine. Now, why is this important? We are starting to see a shift in reference to this protest, where it's not just people who care about the Palestinian cause. It's also now starting to include the workers' movement. It was just a couple of days ago, the UAW, United Auto Workers, they actually announced that they are also standing in solidarity with the Palestinian people. So now we are starting to see unions and workers come together to fight for this cause as well. We are potentially looking at an even larger movement when you add the worker movement to this crisis. And this is something that people have been wanting to see for quite some time. If we could just connect the worker movement to some of these other issues that we're fighting for in this country, and this is internationally, but if we could just find a way to do that, it seems like Palestine may be the way to do that. It goes on to say workers all over Britain are rising up for Palestine, saying we will not allow arms used in a genocide to be supplied in our name and funded by our taxes. Our movement is growing rapidly and gaining more momentum each day. We are escalating our tactics, and today's blockades are seeing unprecedented numbers of people taking part in the disruption of Israeli arms manufacturing in Britain, in concert with workers targeting Israeli arms suppliers around Europe. Listen to this: systematic targeting, excuse me. Kay, a healthcare worker who joined the picket line outside Eaton Mission Systems factory in Bournemouth, told Middle East Eye their decision to protest came to oppose the decimation of Gaza's healthcare system with Israeli warplanes. So now you have healthcare workers that are identifying with the Palestinian movement because of the hospitals that have been destroyed in Gaza. So as healthcare professionals, they know just how important their job is. And they know just how much a healthcare system is needed if people, especially if you're at war, but also just in general when you're not at war. So they see if these hospitals are being demolished, then the people that are left in Gaza, they have nowhere to go to get medical treatment. So now you have the healthcare workers on board. The strategy that Israel is using in this genocide is to systematically target health facilities and systematically targeting disabled Palestinians. This is another thing. The disabled community. When the state of Israel told Palestinian people to leave the north and move south, even though they're bombing the south too, people who are disabled, how are they supposed to move that quickly? And it's one thing if you have the resources to be able to move quickly, but think about where they are. They're in Gaza, right? They have limited resources. How are they supposed to move that fast? It goes on to say the same UK government that has decimated the NHS and social care services through austerity is using that money to underwrite UK companies like Eaton Mission to arm the Israelis to commit its genocide. You guys hear this? See how this is all connected when you start to look at the money? The F-35 fighter jet is built by Lockheed Martin in the United States with the help of international partners, including British factories, which supply components used to help build the warplanes. Earlier this year, Israel placed an additional order of 25 F-35 stealth fighter jets from Lockheed Martin in a deal worth $3 billion. The additional 25 aircraft manufactured by Lockheed Martin will bring the number of F-35s in Israel's Air Force to 75. The Israeli Defense Ministry said the purchase will be financed by aid money Israel receives from the United States. Again, the U.S. government has blood on their hands. I told you before, there are different ways that they can commit a genocide. It's not just bombing the people. If you bomb the hospitals, then how are they supposed to receive any type of health care? Miranda Allen, a Palestinian refugee who lives in the UK, attended the protest at the L3 Harris Arms Factory in Brighton. It's important to stop arming Israel. We need to understand why this war is happening. This war is a business. There is gas in Gaza. They want to make the new Silk Road through Gaza. Israel wants to continue this agenda. And this was this idea that Netanyahu actually presented himself, which is the greater Israel idea. It goes on to say, I was born in a camp in Jordan. Why am I a refugee? I have a beautiful house, beautiful land near Jaffa, Israel. As a Palestinian, we have seen a lot. We have feared a lot. Now we have no fear. Actions happening across Europe. Thursday's actions come as workers in other parts of Europe, including the Netherlands, France, and Germany, held similar actions. Earlier this week, Dutch lawyers petitioned a court to demand the Netherlands stop exporting F-35 components that could be used by Israel to attack Gaza. The protests come as Israel continues its bombardment of Gaza with support from Western countries, including Britain and the United States. Now, remember, when I talked earlier about that vote that happened at the UN today, remember, the US was the only country that voted against permanent ceasefire, and the UK was the only country to abstain. Now, the UK decided to abstain and not vote in support of the ceasefire because they're connected to the United States in reference to the military-industrial complex of Lockheed Martin that's supplying those jets. It goes on to say here, since last Friday, more than 900 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli strikes after a brief truce that saw the release of Palestinian children and women prisoners and Israeli hostages ended. The Israeli bombardment of Gaza has so far killed more than 16,000 Palestinians in Gaza, with the majority of the dead being women and children. At least 7,000 more are missing, according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health. And one thing I did learn when I was at that talk with Miko Palid the other day is that the numbers are actually higher than what they're saying now. These are just the bodies that have been found in the rubble. The numbers always go up over time. So kudos to all those protesters that came out in the UK and decided to protest against these companies. Like, this is what needs to happen. It's not just the protests that happen in DC and protesting at these politicians for the way that they vote. It's also these companies that are actually supplying the weapons, right? So shout out to the UK. Joe says, since October 7th, Raytheon stock has increased 33%. I'm sure it has. And you'll see with companies like Raytheon, by the way, they go through periods where they do like these mass layoffs. And that's usually when there's no war to be had, right?